future of healthcare in America with Senators Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders. Let's now turn to the effects of Obamacare on small businesses. And with us to discuss that is LaRhonda Hunter, who owns 5 hair salons in Texas. LaRhonda.
Hello. Under the controls of Obamacare, my business has been restricted from expansion. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. I own 5 fantastic Sam's hair salons. We employ between 45 and 48 employees. My original plan was to open more salons and employ more people. However, under Obamacare, I am restricted because it requires me to furnish health insurance if I employ more than 50 people. Unfortunately, the profit margin in my industry is very thin, and I'm not a wealthy person, so it's impossible for me to grow my business. My question to you, Senator Sanders, is how do I grow my business? How do I employ more Americans without either raising the prices to my customers or lowering wages to my employees?
Rhonda?
LaRhonda.
LaRhonda, okay. You own 5 salons.
That's correct.
And you employ close to 50 people.
Just under.
And what kind of health insurance do you provide to them?
None.
You provide no health insurance to them?
Correct.
Let me give you an answer you will not be happy with. And that is, I think that for businesses that employ 50 people or more, given the nature of our dysfunctional healthcare system right now, where most people do get their health insurance through the places that they work, I'm sorry. I think that in America today, everybody should have health care. And if you have more than 50 people, you know what? I'm afraid to tell you, but I think you will have to provide health insurance.
So my question is, how do I do that without raising my prices to my customers or lowering wages to my employees?
You see, the difficulty is, and I'm not much of an expert on hair dressing in general, and certainly in Fort Worth.
I'm just one of small businesses.
I know. But my guess is one of the problems that we have is there may be somebody else in Fort Worth who is providing decent health insurance to their employees. And they are in an unfair competitive situation regarding you. You can compete and maybe charge lower prices, get business, while they, on the other hand, may be providing decent health insurance.
I think you'll find the profit margin in my entire industry
maybe.
about the same.
I certainly don't know, about hair salons in Fort Worth. But I do believe, to be honest with you, that if you have more than 50 people, yes, you should be providing health insurance.
Senator Cruz?
LaRhonda, thank you for sharing your story. And it's good to see a fellow Texan here. I've got to say, I've got a very different view than Bernie. I think actually what Bernie told you is the same thing President Obama said. It's the same thing Democrats have said, which is that you, the small business, you're apparently a bad actor because you're not allowed to manufacture money. Let me introduce you all to 2 terms that have become really common. 29ers and 49ers. 29ers are the millions of people across this country that have been forced into part-time work, that used to have full-time employment, and are now working 29 hours a week because Obamacare kicks in at 30 hours a week. And a lot of them are people, they're single moms, they're teenagers, they're immigrants, they're people who are struggling, and then 49ers. There are millions of small businesses in the exact situation you're in. A couple of months ago, I was out in West Texas, was visiting a dairy farmer, driving around the dairy farm. I got to say, interesting smells on the dairy farm. Kind of reminds me of Washington. But the farmer brought up, he said, you know how many employees I have? I said, no. He said, I've got 49. He said, you know why I have 49? I said, yes, I do. Because Obamacare kicks in at 50, and he said, I could hire 20 or 30 more employees right now, but Obamacare would bankrupt my business, and that's millions of small businesses. So we're here at GW. Let me speak for a minute to all the young people. When you come out of college with way too many student loans, my guess is you'd like to get a job. And millions of small businesses being told by the Democrats, tough luck, we don't care if it drives you out of business, that's taken away opportunity, and it's hurting, in particular, the most vulnerable. It's one of the most damaging things about Obamacare.
Senator Sanders?
LaRhonda, let me ask you a question. What happens if one of your employees becomes ill? What happens? What happens if one of your employees, as happens in every part of the country gets diabetes, gets cancer. What do they do if they don't have any health insurance?
I can't really answer that question, but I can tell you that because the premiums have gone up so much this year, and because I don't qualify for any kind of government subsidies, I don't have, for the first time in my life, insurance. It's just not affordable. Unfortunately, the prices of my services just don't warrant it.
Let me just say this, two things. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, it is absolutely true that the cost of premiums are going up. No argument. They went up even higher during the period of George W. Bush. So it's not like, oh, gee, for the first time in American history, premiums are going up. Number two, Ted mentioned part-time work, the 29 as well. There are fewer part-time employees today than there were before Obamacare, okay? So here is the point. The bottom line is, with the situation you described is honestly absurd. You should not be going around without health insurance. Your employees should not be going around without health insurance. We should not be spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other nation. Please join me and fight for a Medicare for All program. Are you looking forward, by the way? I'm not going to ask you your age. Won't do that. But are you looking forward maybe when you get to 65 to get Medicare? Would that be of help to your family?
I expect that will probably happen.
Good. Well, I certainly hope it does, and I hope Medicare is still there, despite the efforts of Senator Cruz and others, so that when you at least reach 65, you will be able to get a decent health insurance program.
Well, Bernie, since apparently I'm now trying to kill the elderly, let me ask you a question. When you heard that her premiums had skyrocketed, that she can't afford health insurance, you kind of said, well, premiums always go up. I mean, let me ask you, why did President Obama look in the eyes of the American people and promise LaRhonda that her health insurance premiums would go down $2,500 a year? Was he telling the truth when he said that? And were you and the other Democrats telling the truth when you echoed his promise to the American people?
Well, Ted, for a start, as everybody knows, healthcare is pretty complicated. I think President Obama is an honest person, and I think based on his assessment, that's what he believed.
Was it true?
But turns out not to be true. But it turns out to be that under Bush, premiums went up higher, not a new thing. Then the real question we should be talking about is why we do spend so much money on healthcare. And that means that we have to appreciate that we are spending hundreds of billions of dollars every single year, not on healthcare, but on administration and bureaucracy. Do you know how much money it costs to bill you? You got people, hundreds of people in large hospitals, they're sitting around not providing healthcare. They're working on paperwork, driving you crazy when you bring forth a claim. So we have to figure out how we have a simple system that guarantees healthcare to all people. When we do that, you and your employees will all have health insurance.
Well, there is an area actually where we agree, which is there is way too much paperwork with health care. There's way too much complexity. I'll tell you, when you talk to doctors, when you talk to nurses, they say, I don't get to practice health care anymore. I spend all my time filling out paperwork, all my time. Now, where the paperwork comes from is the government. It comes from Obamacare. In fact, there's some amazing stats I'm going to go back and get because they're really quite powerful. If you look at the paperwork impact, Obamacare's rules alone, and by the way, the Obamacare rules are 20,000 pages. They're taller than 7 feet tall. They generate $51 billion in costs and more than 172 million hours of paperwork compliance. And let me put that in perspective. What does that mean? That would take 86,200 employees working full-time, 2,000 hours a year, to complete 1 year of new paperwork under Obamacare. That's roughly the entire population of Miami Beach, Florida, doing nothing but filling out Obamacare forms. If you want your doctor to get back to caring for you, if you want to drive down costs, get government out of the business of dictating and controlling health care.
Well, Ted is right. There is far too much paperwork. Some of it is government. But you know what some of it is also? It is insurance companies. Every American who has filed a claim has the experience of fighting with the health insurance companies to make sure that they get what they are entitled to. Doctors have to spend half of their lives arguing with the insurance companies as to whether or not they can prescribe the medicine their patients need or provide the therapy that their patients need. Huge amount of waste. That is why we need a simple system. And as Americans, Ted, we're going to have to make a very fundamental decision. Very simple. Is health care a right of all people? Is it or not? Ted doesn't think it is. I do think it is. And then if we agree, and I think most Americans do, that it is a right, how do you provide health care to all people with high quality in a cost-effective way? I happen to believe that Medicare is a popular program. It works well. Right now, you get it at 65. I think every American.
Senator Sanders, I want to pick the discussion up right there, if I may. Senator Cruz.
Let me make a real quick point, just because I think it's nice having the back and forth and the
lovely,
live. But
absolutely.
One thing Bernie said that I think suggests maybe an area we could work together. You were talking about paperwork from insurance companies. I agree. There's way too much paperwork from insurance companies. I'd like insurance companies to have less power and patients to have more power. So maybe you and I could agree on a common sense reform of allowing LaRhonda to purchase health insurance in any of the 50 states. Right now, she's a Texan. It's illegal for her to purchase health insurance anywhere else. That would give her choice. If she doesn't like what the Texas companies are offering, she can go to Oklahoma, she can go to Florida, she can go to any other state. That creates a 50-state national marketplace. It drives down costs. It increases choices. Why don't we stand together against the insurance companies and agree on that reform?
Well, I think standing together for a Medicare for all single-payer system is a lot better idea.
Okay.
Because when you have the idea that Ted was talking about, this is a race to the bottom. And what you're going to end up with, some insurance company in Mississippi or someplace, they're going to provide you insurance. But you think your deductibles are high now, it will be a lot higher. Look, Ted, and you're right, this is a good discussion, all right? And here is the issue. Ted, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is every American entitled, and I underlined that word, to health care as a right of being an American? Yes or no?
You know, I'm glad you asked that. You know, right is a word you use a lot. Let's talk about what rights are. Rights mean you have a right for government not to mess with you, for government not to do things with you. If you look at the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights, free speech means the government can't silence you when you're speaking. Religious liberty means the government can't control who you worship, what your faith is. The Second Amendment means the government can't take away your guns. Those are rights. You know what the Declaration of Independence said? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what is a right? Is access to health care. What is a right is choosing your own doctor. And if you believe health care is a right, why on earth did you help write Obamacare that caused 6 million people to have their health insurance canceled, that had them lose their doctors, and have people like LaRhonda who can't get health insurance, can't afford premiums? You're denying her what you say is her right.
Well, two things. You didn't answer the question, although I interpret your question to be that LaRhonda does not have a right.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is
I heard the Bill of Rights. I got the Bill of Rights.
Health care is a right.
She has access. But you don't have enough money.
Choosing your doctor
Look,
is a right.
LaRhonda, you have access right now. Go out and get a really great health insurance program. Oh, you can't do it because you can't afford it. All right? That's what he's saying. Access to what? You want to buy one of Donald Trump's mansions? You have access to do that as well. Oh, you can't afford $5 million for a house? Sorry. Access doesn't mean a damn thing. What it means is whether people can afford it, can get the health care that they need.
And they can't under Obamacare.
Second of all, some people have problems. No question about it. I'm not arguing with you on that, Ted. But don't argue with me when I tell you that 20 million more people did get health insurance, all right? We used to have 48 million people in this country who had zero insurance before Obamacare. Now that number, much too high, is 28 million. Last point. Ted talked to the young people, and he said, once you go out with enthusiasm, go out and go to get a job. He's right. But under Ted's ideas, if Obamacare is repealed, right now, if you're under 26, you can stay in your parents' insurance program. That's one of the things we did in Obamacare. Good idea. Ted would repeal that. So as you go out into the real world, be very careful about not having an accident.
Senators, I want to tell our audience we're going to take a quick break. We have a lot more to discuss. More of CNN's debate night and the future of Obamacare right after this.
something new has arrived. Uniquely designed for the driven. Introducing the first ever Infiniti QX30 crossover. Infiniti, empower the drive.
Data plans aren't one size fits all. And since most people use less than 5 gigs,